Okay, let's talk through the steps for placing the Guidewire inserted chest tube. The technique is the same that we use for the central lines and any other Guidewire inserted tube. We're going to start by using a catheter or a needle to gain access to the space where we want to place the tube. So we're going to take this IV catheter, and here's a rib, here's the intercostal space. We're going to come over here and insert our catheter and then feed the catheter off into the pleural space. Once we have access to the pleural space, we need to get a guide wire in there so we can run a catheter down over the wire. So the wires come in these wire management systems, and you do not disassemble them. They will come apart, but you don't want to do that because then the wire flops around, it gets contaminated, you lose your aseptic technique. So these are made so that we can manage this wire with one hand. So pull this cap off. We have a J wire here. The J-tip, the purpose of that J-tip is so that when it passes down into the pleural space or down a vessel or wherever we're putting it, instead of having the pointy part of the wire going and potentially stabbing through things, we have the curve, and that's just going to kind of push the tissue away from the wire as it advances. So you back the wire up into the plastic tube here, fit it down into the IV catheter hub, and then start feeding the wire off into the pleural space. So we're going to feed this one off until we have about 2 of those hash marks on the wire. So you can see these hash marks on the wire. So we'll get those 2 hash marks down into the chest, and then we'll take our guide wire out of its little containment system. Once the guide wire is in the chest, we'll remove the IV catheter, being very careful not to contaminate the wire. Always hold on to the wire and don't let it flop around and flail and touch things and become contaminated. If the wire becomes contaminated, we have to start over with a new sterile kit. Next, we're going to pass the dilator down over the wire. The purpose of the dilator is to stretch out the skin and the sub-Q tissue so that it's the same, the tunnel that we've made is the same size as the catheter that we're about to place, or the chest tube that we're about to place. So, put it in with a little bit of a twisting motion. Once you have it all the way down into the chest, pull it right back out. Always in control of the wire. And then finally we're going to place our catheter, or in this case our chest tube, down over the guide wire. So feed the catheter onto the guide wire. When the wire comes out the end, I'll grab hold of that wire, and now I can feed my tube off into the pleural space. Once the tube is in, I can remove the guide wire. And now I can attach my syringe or my 3-way stopcock in a syringe, or I can just cap this off, but realistically I'm putting this in because the pleural space needs to be evacuated, so I'm going to connect my syringe and start evacuating the pleural space. Once that's done and secure, or once that's done, we can secure the tube. So you just put a suture through each of these little wings here in the plastic and through the skin and deep into the sub-Q tissue and back out, and then just tie it with 2 simple interrupted knots on either side.